In the winter of 1997, an isolated mountain town in Colorado experienced a power outage that lasted 9 hours. Official reports blamed ice storms and damaged transmission lines. But the people who survived Hollow Creek remembered something else. They remembered the figures standing in the snow. They remembered the voices coming from dead radios. And they remembered the photographs discovered afterward inside the abandoned ranger station at the edge of the forest. The town itself barely existed on most maps. Hollow Creek sat deep within the mountains, surrounded by endless pine forests and narrow roads that became nearly impossible to travel during heavy snow. Fewer than 600 people lived there year-round. Most residents worked at the sawmill, the gas station, or the nearby mining routes that had slowly died decades earlier. It was the kind of place where everyone recognized every passing vehicle. The kind of place where strangers were noticed immediately. And during winter, it became a place completely cut off from the world. By December, snow had buried nearly every rooftop in town. Ice clung to telephone poles like frozen veins. The forest surrounding Hollow Creek looked endless and black after sunset, stretching into darkness without a single visible light for miles. Locals carried strange traditions during those winters. Most homes kept curtains tightly shut after midnight. People avoided walking near the woods alone. And children were taught one specific rule from an early age. If the power ever went out at night, never look toward the tree line. Most younger residents laughed at the warning. The older ones never did. Long before Hollow Creek became a town, the area had been used as a temporary settlement for railway workers in the late 1800s. Records from that period were incomplete, but surviving journals described disappearances during snowstorms. Men reportedly wandered outside after hearing knocking sounds beyond their cabins. Some were later found frozen miles away in impossible locations. Others were never found at all. One journal recovered decades later described people standing between the trees during blizzards. Another claimed voices could sometimes be heard calling names from outside despite nobody being there. Eventually, the settlement was abandoned. Years later, Hollow Creek was built almost directly over the same area. For decades, nothing unusual happened beyond occasional rumors and missing hikers. Then came the blackout. The storm arrived on December 14th. By evening, freezing rain hammered the town so heavily that visibility dropped to almost nothing. Thick winds screamed through the mountains, rattling windows hard enough to wake sleeping residents. Snow piled against front doors. Telephone lines sagged beneath layers of ice. At exactly 8:17 p.m., every light in Hollow Creek died simultaneously. The town vanished into darkness. At first, nobody panicked. Power outages were common during winter storms. Families lit candles. Battery radios crackled weakly across kitchen tables. Some residents simply went to bed early, expecting electricity to return within an hour or two. But then the noises began. Several people later reported hearing footsteps outside their homes almost immediately after the blackout started. Not random movement, organized movement. Slow footsteps crunching through deep snow, back and forth, back and forth. Some residents assumed utility workers had arrived to repair damaged lines until they noticed something disturbing. No vehicle sounds accompanied the footsteps. No engines. No voices. Only movement. One family living near the northern edge of town claimed shadows repeatedly crossed their windows despite the storm outside being too dense to see clearly through. Another resident later admitted he watched several tall figures standing motionless near his backyard fence for nearly 10 minutes before they slowly disappeared into the snow. The radios changed around 9 p.m. Most stations dissolved into static because of the storm, but strange interruptions started bleeding through the silence. Weak voices emerged briefly between bursts of interference. Some sounded distorted beyond recognition. Others sounded almost normal. Several survivors later described hearing their own names spoken through the static. One woman claimed the voice belonged to her dead brother. A retired truck driver insisted he heard children laughing through his emergency radio moments before every battery inside his home suddenly died. At the center of town, the sheriff's office attempted to contact nearby counties using backup communication equipment. Nothing worked. Every line remained dead. Then deputies received a call from the old ranger station near Blackwood Trail. The problem was that the ranger station had been abandoned for nearly 12 years. The station sat deep within the forest several miles outside town. Built during the 1940s, it had once served as a monitoring post for wildfire patrol teams before budget cuts shut it down permanently. Locals avoided the area because of stories connected to disappearances in the surrounding woods. The emergency call lasted only 18 seconds. According to reports written afterward, all operators heard was heavy breathing followed by the sound of knocking. Then a voice quietly said, "Don't let them inside." The line went dead immediately afterward. Deputies initially assumed teenagers were playing a prank, but one detail disturbed everyone involved. The abandoned station had no active phone connection. None. Despite worsening weather, 2 deputies eventually left town shortly after 10 p.m. to investigate the call. Visibility had become almost impossible by then. Snow blasted across roads in violent waves while freezing wind rocked the patrol vehicle continuously. The deeper they traveled into the forest, the quieter the world became. No animals, no movement, no sound beyond the storm itself. Then they noticed footprints crossing the road ahead. Bare human footprints, dozens of them, leading into the trees. The deputies followed Blackwood Trail another mile before spotting the ranger station through the storm. Lights glowed faintly inside. That should have been impossible. The building had no electricity. As they approached, both deputies reportedly noticed figures standing among the trees surrounding the station. Tall shapes barely visible through snowfall, completely still, watching. The front entrance to the station stood partially open. Snow drifted slowly through the doorway. Inside, the building looked untouched by time. Dust-covered old desks. Filing cabinets rusted against the walls. Water stains spread across the ceiling like dark veins. Yet dim yellow light flickered from a lantern sitting near the center of the room. Fresh footprints covered the floor. Dozens of them. The deputies searched the station room by room without finding anyone. But several things immediately disturbed them. Every clock inside the building had stopped at exactly 8:17 p.m. The same moment the blackout began. The second thing was worse. Photographs. Hundreds of photographs lined the walls and floors of the back office. Some were nailed up. Others scattered across tables. Most appeared old, dating back decades. Nearly all showed residents of Hollow Creek. Sleeping, standing near windows, walking through town, inside their own homes. Many photographs had clearly been taken without the subjects knowing. But the final images terrified the deputies most. Recent photographs sat developing inside trays near the back room. Pictures taken that very night. The images showed homes across Hollow Creek during the blackout. And in nearly every photograph, dark figures could be seen standing outside the houses, watching through windows, waiting at doors. The deputies contacted town immediately after the discovery. No response came through the radio. Then the knocking started upstairs. 3 slow knocks, followed by silence. The deputies searched the upper floor with weapons drawn. Most rooms were empty except for broken furniture and collapsing walls. But near the end of the hallway, they found one locked door. The knocking came again, soft this time, almost patient. One deputy forced the door open. The room behind it was empty except for a chair facing the corner. And hanging across every wall were photographs of the 2 deputies entering the station only minutes earlier. taken from outside, through the windows. Neither officer noticed the third figure standing behind them in the final image until much later. The power returned to Hollow Creek at exactly 5:16 a.m. The storm weakened shortly afterward. Residents emerged from their homes exhausted and confused. Many believed fear and isolation had simply caused mass panic during the blackout. Until the bodies were found. One deputy was discovered wandering the highway barefoot nearly 15 miles from town, suffering severe frostbite and hypothermia. He survived but never fully recovered mentally. According to hospital staff, he spent weeks repeating the same sentence over and over again while staring toward windows. They were already inside. The second deputy was never found. Search teams later discovered the patrol vehicle abandoned near Blackwood Trail with every door left open. Inside the ranger station, investigators recovered all the photographs exactly where deputies described them. But when state police returned days later with forensic teams, every image had changed. The figures outside the homes were gone. Only empty streets remained. Officials sealed the station permanently soon afterward. The blackout itself became just another winter disaster in official records. Equipment failure, storm damage, tragic circumstances, but people who lived through Hollow Creek remembered details that never appeared in reports. For years afterward, residents claimed they sometimes saw shapes standing among the trees during snowstorms, watching silently, waiting for darkness. Several families eventually moved away. Others refused to discuss that night at all. The ranger station still exists deep within the forest, slowly collapsing beneath snow and time. Roads leading there have mostly disappeared. Trees have swallowed much of Blackwood Trail. Most maps no longer even label the structure. But hikers occasionally report strange things near the area during winter. Footprints appearing beside them in fresh snow. Camera batteries dying instantly. Distant knocking sounds echoing between trees after sunset. And sometimes, during blizzards when visibility becomes almost zero, people claim they see figures standing far beyond the tree line, perfectly still, as if waiting for the lights to go out again.